from Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District. Congressman, good to have you on the program again. Thank you.
Good morning, Bill. Great to be with you.
So what do you think, what chances would you give? I mean, are Republicans really dumb enough to shut the government down and determined enough?
I hope not, although, all the indications are that's where they're headed. But, I'm cautiously optimistic that in the very final moments, the Tea Party faction within the Republican caucus will understand that this is very bad for the American people, and they will pay a political cost for it. Because I think for some of these folks, there's a calculation about what are their base voters want. And I think once they conclude that they will pay a political price if they shut the government down, my hope is that they will come to their senses and agree to a continuing resolution that keeps the government functioning. But it's hard to know because there's a real civil war in the Republican Party, and we're watching it. And these are folks that are just committed to shutting down the government unless they get 100% of what they want. And, this has been sort of the problem for the last several years, a group of folks unwilling to reach compromise and find common ground and get things done for the American people.
Well, it seems, Congressman, watching it from a distance and not being right in the middle of it that you are, that for the Republican caucus, it is the tail wagging the dog here, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we see this on virtually every important issue that comes to the Congress. We have enough votes without a question to pass comprehensive immigration reform, a responsible farm bill, a transportation bill, even a budget, but for this small group within the Republican caucus that is running the show, that's sort of driving the agenda of the Republicans, and the unwillingness of the other Republicans to stand up and sort of speak out against it. But on all those bills, there would be enough Democrats, and probably most Democrats, and enough Republicans to pass every one of those bills, but the Speaker will not bring them to the floor because of this adherence to this Hastert rule, which is actually not a rule but just a practice, that says I won't bring a bill to the floor unless a majority of my caucus support it. And, this is a democracy. If a majority of the members of Congress are for it, we should be passing this stuff.
Yeah, I know. We don't see that democracy in the House because of the Hastert rule. We don't see it in the Senate because of the filibuster. So,
I mean, and it's very, when you're serving there and you know that on all of these issues, there are compromise bills that would pass the House if only they were brought to the floor. I mean, that's the frustrating part. But I think the Speaker has to come to terms with building a governing coalition with the Democrats and, sort of write off this really extreme portion of his caucus and prove to the American people that we can get things done. And I think he will benefit from that in the long term, even politically. But I think he's just unwilling to do it, and he's allowing this small faction to really dictate the direction of his caucus. And I think it's bad for the Republicans, but more importantly, it's bad for our country.
Walk us through the steps, if you can, Congressman, when Congress is back in town this week. So the House has already passed its version of the budget,
Continuing
resolution. Now, what happens when you come back? It's the ball's in the Senate's court now, and then
that's right. And the Senate will. I think the presumption is the Senate will strip out the provisions that defund health care reform and send that back to the House.
And then?
And my guess is they'll send it back to the House late enough that House members will be in a position to either vote for it in its current form or shut the government down. And so I think that's going to be the test.
Whoa. And will that go before the full body, the full House?
Yes.
I guess it has to, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But, I mean, the American people are watching this, and, people are still struggling in a very difficult economy. It's still very high levels of unemployment, in my district and in other places around the country. We're still dealing with the ravages of the housing crisis and, so many important challenges. And, they're watching this play out again and thinking, can't these folks on the House side get anything done? And it's very frustrating. I think the Republicans are going to pay a price for it. And just to remind your listeners, part of the reason we're in this problem is we don't have a budget. Why don't we have a budget? We passed a budget on the House side, a terrible budget as far as I'm concerned, authored by Paul Ryan. The Senate passed a budget on their side. The normal process is it goes to conference committee, so you can work out the disagreements, reach a compromise, and pass a budget. The Speaker has refused to appoint conferees so that process can continue. And the reason, I suspect, is when you have a conference committee, it's televised, and it would require the Republicans in the House to actually go and defend the Ryan budget, which I don't think they ever expected would really become the law of the land, so they don't want to defend it. They thought it'd be very useful to send out emails about it and appeal to their Tea Party base about how draconian it is. But they don't want to be on TV defending it because it's indefensible. So we don't have a conference committee to actually enact the budget. And so this is the consequence of it while we're doing continuing resolution to continuing resolution.
And by the way, which the president keeps pointing out, this is the constitutional responsibility of the Congress.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like the most important responsibility we have is to pass the budget. And, Leader Pelosi appointed her conferees to the conference committee so that they make the point, we're ready to go. But the Speaker has so far refused to appoint conferees. That's a real dereliction of duty. I mean, this is how we enact a budget. And, look, the Republicans supported that budget. They ought to go in a room and either acknowledge it's not the right budget for our country or defend it. But the American people have a right to have a budget enacted by the Congress.
Let me ask you, so the issue here, of course, and you mentioned a couple of times is Obamacare, right? That's what we all call the Affordable Care Act now. These exchanges, a week from today, people can sign up in these health exchanges, those who do not get health insurance at their workplace. What are the prospects in Rhode Island? Are the exchanges going to be open, and are the rates affordable? What can you tell us about that?
I'm very proud of the work that's being done in our state. Our governor, our lieutenant governor, Elizabeth Roberts, Christy Ferguson, a great healthcare leader in our country, have been really leading the charge here, and we have lots of exciting work being done, and I think Rhode Island will end up being a model to the country in terms of the implementation of Obamacare and the development of the exchanges. We're doing a lot of exciting work on payment reform and ways that we can really bend the cost curve on health care. But this notion that providing 30 million more Americans with access to quality health care and closing the donut hole for seniors, being sure that there are no lifetime caps on insurance, ending discrimination against people because of pre-existing conditions, and letting young people stay on their parents' plan until they're 26 are all things that are overwhelmingly supported by the American people. And I think this is going to be one of those things, where this is a major transformation of our healthcare system, and we should not expect that it's going to go perfectly. There will be some bumps in the road, but I think that we will look back at, in the very near future and say, this is like Medicare and Social Security. It's one of the great things we did to ensure everyone has access to quality, affordable health care. And I think we're going to all be very proud of the results of that. And we have to be prepared to look at it, and if there needs to be some tweaks or some modifications to improve it, we should be prepared to do it. And that's what we should have been doing for the last 3 years, kind of figuring out how is it being implemented, is it really working right, and make the changes if there need to be any. But instead, we've had 44 or 43 votes to gut it or repeal it. So we don't have willing partners on the other side that want it to be successful for the American people. So we've spent 3 years with votes to just repeal it rather than working together in a bipartisan way to implement it to make sure it works for the American people.
And the premium's going to be affordable in Rhode Island as well?
I think that we're going to find that over time the costs we're going to bend the cost curve. I think we're seeing some early evidence around the country of the premiums being lower. And don't forget, many of people who will now access the exchanges will have a subsidy from the government, which is a really important provision, so it should be affordable to many more people who are currently without health care.
Well, it's critical, and as you know, Congressman, the reason Republicans are so desperate to stop it now is because once more and more people sign up with these exchanges, right, it's going to be less and less likely they're going to be able to ever get rid of Obamacare.
Right. Well, did you read Eugene Robinson today? Said the real danger of Obamacare is it's going to be successful. That's the real danger of the Republicans.
I know. Well, when you get back here, though, you'll have your full plate and lots of challenges, Congressman. Thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate it so much. All right. David Cicilline does a great job representing 1st District of the people of Rhode Island.